People who have straight up rage quit a job. What was the final straw? I pulled into work. Guys committing suicide and left a note. So his wife, pastor, lawyer, kids and anyone else showed up and started screaming at me. I have no clue what's going on. In fact, the night before a guy came and said his wife was crazy and he was hiding. Great. We have rules for this. I get suicide guy to talk to police while I get his family kicked out. I do not deserve their shit. So I left and they're all surrounded my car screaming at me. I heard the dude killed himself a few weeks later. And honestly, my first thought was a divorce would have fixed more issues easier. Lawn care company, typically long shifts. And I needed to get home early to play soccer. I love soccer. Get to the shop and they stick me with a newbie. Tad start. Give me a long route to do. Not getting any better. We get to the first house and my machine breaks down. That was it. Called the manager and told him to come and get his truck, or I was coming back to the shop. Tells me to come back. Tries to talk me down. But I just throw the keys at him and walk home. Leave the newbie to fend for himself. Walked home for free. 5 hours because I had no ride, but made my soccer game easy. Lows. Got put into delivery with zero training. Didn't do any lifting training at store. Didn't do computer training either. Sent me out to deliver appliances with one person for the day in the middle of winter. Final straw was a month later after I switched to online orders. Still no training. No computer training. No work vest. They scheduled me for 5 a.m. when the store didn't even open until like 7-8 a.m. So I would have been pinged. No one was in the store. All working when I showed up, so I went home, slept, and never called or returned to work again. Now I refuse to shop there too. I worked in basically a sweatshop. Horrible. Damp. Not climate-controlled warehouse. Mass-producing screen-printed shirts for $14 an hour. My boss, the owner, was a 60-year-old creep who loved to talk to me about how hot his 25-year-old wife was and drove to work every day in his highlighter yellow Lambo. On two occasions he forgot to pay me. He was just in general a bully. Fuck that guy, then. On a beautiful July afternoon, I saw two guys out the bay door ride by on their motorcycles. I thought, fuck this place. I wanna go do that. I just walked out and went for a ride. I would always text might be 5 minutes late, just in case when traffic looked iffy. I pride myself on punctuality and am alert if traffic is a bitch. I had never shown up late, but texting that I might be was always recorded as showing up late. It was like the 7th time they said I was 5 minutes late, when I never was. I knew I could find somewhere else that would appreciate me being proactive that I might be 5 minutes late. I'm a valuable employee elsewhere because I show up on time. But I am aware traffic where I live sucks. Kitchens can be the worst. I was a sous chef at a pretty odd place in the middle of nowhere. We had regular service, but also guests that stayed overnight and required breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I wasn't allowed overtime, which was illegal, I know, but the hours were banked as extra time off. It was a good opportunity at the time. My chef and all my support got COVID. I covered. Just me. One night I had to leave early after a 12-person service, so I left a few dishes for the next day, because we had no dishy. I got yelled at for it and I was so burned out at that point, I just walked. I started work in a bar in town and was told to be at work at 7 p.m. for my first shift, with the manager providing me with a tight timesheet showing my new working hours. Went home and had a cat nap. At 5 p.m. my new manager calls me asking where the hell I am and telling me I need to come in now. I referred him to my timesheet which stated I was to be in at 7 p.m. To which he told me the timesheet doesn't effing matter. You do what I tell you. Hearing this, I politely told him that I would not be in tonight or ever. Good night, and went back to my cat nap. I was working in food service for the prison system, and the management told me that my concerns with the black mold on the roof and with food safety practices, e.g. and people were thawing it over the course of for 6 hours in the proofer, so the outer edge was sitting in the danger zone for most of that time were not a big deal because they were just inmates. To be clear, I was an employee of a private contracting company that provided food service at the lowest possible bid for the region. Privatization at its finest. I was flat out lied to about the position. Gemeant position at a residential mental health facility, and I had taken it leaving a great paying but stressful position because it wouldn't require travel and was supposed to be much more laid back. Off even weekends and one holiday. So after a very heated meeting with upper management where one person was flat out lying to cover their own butt, I sent a resignation email from the parking lot. My first job was at the BK Lounge. Overall a chill job, and I was there for a while saving up summer money to pay my dad back for hitting my buddy's car. The manager one day asked me to scrub the inside of the metal hood thing that hangs above the fryers. Gave me a small step stool that I had to reach really high to actually reach the ceiling, on slippery greasy floors, and wouldn't turn off the fryers while I did it. It felt like it was 1,000,000 degrees out there as I dangled over the fryers. Didn't say anything, just walked out and never came back. Godfather's Pizza. The manager wouldn't give me my paycheck at 8 p.m. on Sunday because the money might not be in the account yet, but I could pick it up at 9 a.m. Monday. This was decades ago, before direct and mobile deposits. The bank wouldn't be open until the next day anyway. All the paychecks were literally in his hand at that moment. There were lots of issues before that. That was the final sign that the manager was completely uninterested in reason. In the next few weeks nearly everyone else quit. Then the manager was finally fired. Us graduate student assistants were forced to come to campus to work in person, sharing cramped cubicle spaces while attending Zoom meetings, where 100 of the full-time staff were working from home. To add insult to injury, we had just spent an entire summer all working remotely, and us grad assistants had proved our ability to complete our work to a high quality remotely. Nobody was even there on campus to supervise us or offer assistance without jumping on a call. Anyways, it was such bullshit and I quit halfway through the year. WFH call center talking to people dumber than NPCs for 8 hours every day. Being required to work one weekend day. Poor leadership. Shitty pay, never being allowed to move departments, being told unless someone dies chances of being promoted are slim to none. It took a huge toll on my mental health, so I left same day, no notice and no regrets. They ended up firing everyone a few months later and outsourcing to the Philippines so they can cut down pay costs. If you're wondering, company starts with V and sells bras and panties. I was told to move a bunk of 4 joists to the back of a building that was being framed up. It was my first day on the job, so okay, I'll move these 20 long frozen us 100-pounds boards across this muddy uneven terrain. I took my tool belt off because I'm just humping lumber. The boss yells down at me and says you ain't no fucking Mexican. Put that tool belt back on. Gave him the finger. Grabbed my pack and got in my car. I drove down a few streets and got hired for more money. And the whole crew got high. FYMF. Caught chewed out by a pharmacist in front of everyone because other people were screwing around. I wasn't having it, so I walked out to take a break and keep myself from responding in kind. When I was out, a pharmacist who was filling in yelled at her for how she treated me. I then got chewed out by the first pharmacist and the pharmacy manager for getting her yelled at. Apparently I was the problem and was the one starting drama in the pharmacy. I told the pharmacy manager that I would no longer be their problem. The place had to be staffed 24 hours a day. They refused to hire more people and corporate fired our GM without replacing him. It got to the point where the shift expectation went from 8 hours a day for everyone with 3 shifts to 12 hours a day with 2 shifts. I noped out when I was told halfway through my night shift that they would need me to stay for 4 more hours. The job sucked and the management was absent. I looked back on some of my writing from that time a few years later. I really hated that job. I got into an argument with my abusive ex-husband during my lunch break. I had a panic attack sitting in my car. so it made me late back from lunch. And on about how much of a burden I'm to the team for being late. As if that wasn't caused by understaffing actually, so I told her I'm sorry, I'm such a disappointment and hire someone better. I packed my shit and stormed out. She went ahead and lied around that I'd cussed her out, that it was false and nobody who knew me believed her. She wanted, after years of suffering through stress in another, was called by management over the summer and told she was being reassigned to the stressful position because no one else wanted to do it. She had fought too long and hard to get what she wanted. And her immediate response was, "Then tell me what I need to do to resign." She did, and she's been at peace with her decision ever since. At one office job, I quit after the first day because the lady training me would ignore me when our manager wasn't around, and I caught her snooping through my purse when I went to the bathroom. At a clinic, I quit after a month because they made me do a solo receptionist shift without training me on what I needed to do to open the clinic. And then I got yelled at for not knowing what to do in front of patients. It was so bad. Some of the patients came up to me after and asked if I was okay. Entire summer because the new manager can't keep the previous manager's promise of summer full-time. And after all this, a supervisor flips because I couldn't make a shift that I asked off 5 days early. Quit mid-conversation by text. At that point there wasn't even a manager, just the supervisor watching over things because the previous one got promoted and they're training the new guy. Was having a meeting with the boss, who was a difficult guy to work with, and he stood up and punched the wall. He wasn't doing it jokingly. He bare-knuckled went at the wall of his own office like he was in the gym hitting a punching bag. I sat there in astonishment for about 2 seconds, then stood up and left, cleared out my desk, exited through the back door without a word to anyone. There's no place for that conduct in the professional world, even if the guy does own the company.